What's going on, guys? Another Nittany Nation instant reaction podcast. Some big Penn State news. 12th commitment, Ejani Shakir out of Winslow Township. Eric, how this one kind of just come together?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, it looks like just one that the staff has kind of been on for a while. They've been working with him. They've had him on campus. I mean, we were talking off air a little bit earlier, but they've had him on campus 5 times at least that we know of. He's been to State College, and it just feels like one of those things where the relationships kind of evolved over time. Both parties kind of got to the right spot and decided, you know what, let's make this thing happen. And I think that's kind of the way it worked. He's been entertaining some other schools. West Virginia probably in particular was one of those schools, perhaps, Rutgers and other places like that. But yeah, I think Penn State has just been, on him for a while. He's obviously wanted, to be a Nittany Lion to some extent. You don't go visit someplace 5 times if you don't really, have that in the back of your mind a little bit. And I think it was just time for it to all kind of come to fruition. It was something maybe that we thought could happen maybe in the summer when there's official visits, because he is slated to take an official visit in the summer to State College, maybe around that time. But, why wait, right? Get it out of the way and make this thing happen. And like you said, commitment number 12 in the boat.
Yeah, so I do want to touch on that official visit thing, but let's push that to the side for a second. He's an athlete per our database. I think he's number 39 overall athlete, top 6 kid in New Jersey. But it sounds like he's going to play wide receiver for Penn State. I think he's listed 5'11", probably around that 6 foot range. Does he kind of remind you of anybody, or does it what are some of these unique traits he shows as a wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, so as a wide, and I think Rivals has it right. I do think that he is a true athlete. I think that he could play defense at the next level. As a nickel corner, if he ever wants to entertain that thought, that's an idea there. But yeah, wide receiver, that's where Penn State sees him right now. That's where they have him on their board. I think that's where he wants to play. And I think when you're looking at the film and what you see that really sticks out from him at the wide receiver position, he's smooth, but really what he does well is, he adjusts his body in the air. He can go up and get it, contort his body any which way, and then he's just a good hands catcher, right? He puts his hands up in the air and plucks it out of the air. And so for a guy that's 5'11", 6 foot, whatever it may be, to see him elevate like that and be able to contort his body is always something that you like to see, because he can obviously battle the corners out there and go get things like that. And so he does show a little bit of a he's I wouldn't say he's a quick burst guy. He does have some acceleration. He kind of builds up to speed. He does have some track background in him. He does have, he runs a sub 22 200, which is impressive. It's a pretty solid time. Right? He's got a 55 time, that 55 meter time that again can work. But again, he's got some acceleration, but he's a build up speed type of guy. He can be a threat on special teams because of that and things like that. But yeah, I think the main thing that you see when you're watching his film and say, can this man play wide receiver for Penn State at the next level, and why? I think you have to kind of look at the way that he adjusts his body in the air, the way that he can jump up and go get it and pluck it out of the air is really what sticks out to me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty solid get for Penn State. Just want to touch a little more on him. I know him a little more just because I'm from Jersey, obviously. Winslow Township technically, but he's actually a transfer from Pennsauken High School. He just transferred into Winslow recently. Offensive coordinator there, Bill Belton, former Penn State running back, Rivals 250 guy back in the day. His quarterback coach over at Winslow is now Christian Hackenberg, who everyone knows pretty well, I would think. So yeah, I mean, the last kid to come out of Winslow and go to Penn State was Bill Belton. So it's a pretty good get for Penn State, it seems like. And I think you're spot on with that nickel corner type thing. I'm not sure. I've watched both tapes. He has one specifically for offense and one specifically for defense. And
exactly,
it's interesting because
on that defensive highlight tape, on the first clip, I think it is, or one of the first few clips, you just see how quick he is to react and go get make some plays on the ball in the air. And so I don't know if that's what he wants to hear, if that's what he wants to be at some point, but I think he's got that. He is, in my opinion, a legit athlete where he could play nickel corner if wide receiver doesn't ultimately work out, because obviously, wide receiver at Penn State's a pretty darn competitive position. So I think it's a win-win kind of for Penn State, because I think this guy can help you, whether it's on offense or defense.
Yeah, most definitely. Sounds like he's going to fit in the offense pretty nicely, or defense, I guess. But I guess kind of going back to what we were talking about before, you said official visits in the summer for him. A lot of these guys are already scheduled their official visits. Seems like the big weekend is going to be the 17th for the commits, but there's also a bunch of uncommitted guys who are going to come on the 10th, the 17th, the 24th. Who are some of these guys that you're kind of keeping a close eye on?
Yeah, so obviously the 17th has kind of grabbed everybody's attention, I think, just because of, the big 3 that'll be there that weekend when you're talking about Tamir Robinson, Tony Rojas, and Rodney Gallagher. I think that obviously brings everybody's attention because, and you hit it on the head when the commits are going to be there as well. It's almost gets that big weekend type feel, right? And so yeah, I think that's something to watch. I think London Montgomery is also scheduled for that weekend. If not that weekend, another one. You'd have to correct me on that.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just shaping up to be a real big summer. I mean, quite frankly, June's going to be big. I mean, they're at 12 now, right? I mean, it's not realistic, or it's believable, right? To think that by the time they come out of June, they should be looking at least where they're, 5, 6 more, just with the kind of the visitors they're going to have on campus. Now they might all come in June because I think even Rodney Gallagher has an announcement set for July 4th. So, that's going to be not immediately there in June, but obviously that's a date that you have to circle if you're, Penn State and the Penn State fans, because I think you got to feel good there because he's going to visit Notre Dame earlier in the month. You're going to get the last crack at him if you're Penn State. You're going to have him there with all of your commits. You're going to have him there with all, Tamir. So he's going to be the big, he's going to have a lot of a love, I guess, if you'll say, being thrown his way. So yeah, 17 is a big weekend, but yeah, the rest of them are going to be big too. 10's got some really good visitors. They're bringing up some guys from Florida. I know that will be there that weekend. And so it's reasonable to believe that the 10th might jumpstart things with maybe a commitment or two. But yeah, that 17th, I think, is really because King Mack as a defensive back out of St. Thomas Aquinas, they already have Conrad Hussey in the mix. King Mack's coming up that 24th. Oh no, sorry, excuse me, the 17th weekend. And so he could be somebody that you should be maybe paying close attention to. So yeah, they're going to have a bunch of dudes on campus in the month of June, and it should be a good month if I'm Coach Franklin and staff.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We thought this was going to be a majority, or not a majority, but a good chunk of it was going to be Virginia kids. Now it seems like a good chunk of Pennsylvania kids jumped on board or are close to jumping on board. Now it's Florida kids and Marcus Stokes and Conrad Hussey and maybe King Mack. But then there's also another Georgia kid who we didn't talk about too much that you just kind of confirmed the official visit for, and Zachariah Owens.
Yeah, Owens. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, and so that's another big one. That is a big one, and that's going to be the last weekend in June, and that's a good one to touch on too, because so he's really thinking that the kind of the mindset is it's maybe between Clemson and Penn State, right? Coming out of that, he visited. A couple of weeks ago, he visited State College, and coming out of that visit, the murmurs were that, Penn State had elevated themselves to the very top of his list, and Clemson had kind of been leading the way. Michigan's jumped in there. They're going to vie for a spot there in terms of a official visit, and maybe in between the two, because Clemson's going to be at the beginning of June, Penn State at the end. But we'll see. I think it's really Clemson or Penn State, and then you could see a decision really coming from him quite shortly after that. The one thing about him to note, his dad lives up in New York, right? And so it's pretty reasonable to believe that Penn State could be a serious player here. And yeah, that last visit, again, when you get that last visit, it's something to watch because you're going to have the last crack at them and you're really going to be able to play on their emotions a little bit. We always said, when it comes to the official visit schedule, depending on the time of the year and where you're at with things, you'd rather be first or last, right? Because first you're setting the bar, and last you get the last crack with them, at least to play on the emotions. And so, sandwiched in between sometimes not always the best spot to be, especially if they're going to take all 5. But yeah, so I really like where Penn State sits there with Owens and getting that last spot with them for sure.
Awesome. So I know you might be able to use Owens as kind of a cop-out answer for this one, but we always do this at the end of these podcasts. Give me a future cast. Who we think is next for Penn State? Who's number 13? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Owens is a great pick, but I think Owens, since he's coming in that last weekend, you're really talking about, somebody's going to commit before that, right? Yeah. And I think, I really am looking at King Mack as somebody that could get that jump started on the 17th weekend. Now, again, that's the 17th weekend. Can somebody get in the boat before then? Even London Montgomery's coming up the 17th, and I've, where we've put in a couple future casts for London to be a future Nittany line. So those 3 guys are names that definitely we should be watching what the order is and how they go. I don't know exactly how that will all play out, but those are 3 names you have to watch. And then on that first weekend, the 10th, does this guy like, Jalen Braxton, does he really, coming up from Texas, does he really like it up there in Penn State and want to pull the trigger? Or Luke Evans is another name. I don't know. I mean, for some of those guys, they'll be interesting to follow that 10th weekend. Again, I think the 10th weekend could have a surprise. And and commitment, right, to kind of get everything jump started for June.
Mhm.
That 17th weekend, I think you should certainly expect 2, if not 3, coming immediately out of the weekend, with then more of those other guys like Robinson, Rojas, and Gallagher, maybe perhaps deciding shortly after. And then that last weekend with Owens, certainly somebody to watch as well. But right now, if you're telling me I got to make a future cast for who's going to be next, let's go ahead and I've already got one in for London Montgomery. Let's go ahead and rock one with King Mac as one of the next ones as well.
Interesting. Well, you guys heard it. Stay tuned at pennstate.rivals.com over the next, I guess, month and a half or so. Sounds like it's going to be pretty busy for Penn State football, and we'll have more podcasts soon.
Oh, yeah, for sure.